الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. I made handouts for today. One of the key action items is a dua. I left this morning, and as I'm driving near Hossein, I realized I forgot the handouts at home. So I turned around and went back. Then when I got to the masjid, I left the car. I was about to enter the masjid, and I realized I left the handouts in my car. Why do I say that? I'm pretty sure Shaitan doesn't want you guys to have this handout or to act on the dua. So I try to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be able to follow up this conversation, this get together with action. When you look at Islam, when you look at La ilaha illallah, it requires three aspects of your life. Number one, there's a intellectual aspect. Belief in Allah, belief in the prophets, belief in the book. You have to really have yaqeen. The second aspect involves your physical body. You have to pray. You have to fast. Someone can just say, I believe in Islam, but not follow it up with action. And the third component is your emotions, your feelings. I have some of my patients who, one of their main cause of their blood pressure issues, their diabetes, their obesity, their issues with sleeping, is because of chronic stress, chronic anxiety, constant worry, fear, regret. It's emotional. And so in today's short talk together, what I'm going to be talking about today is the necessary reminder. It's not that complicated, but it's the reminder you need to give. I have to give myself, we have to give each other. Because we live, again, in a time in a society of constantly being busy, multitasking, overwhelmed, work, money, finances. We have issues with our culture, raising kids. We have so many challenges. So we live in a society of this type of sentiment. And so inshallah, some of the key points I want to talk about today. The first point of being that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us in a state of struggle. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي كَبَدٍ. We have certainly created a human being buried under heavy loads, exhaustive labor. So emotionally we're going to be struggling, physically we're going to be struggling, health-wise we're going to be struggling, financially we're going to be struggling, when it comes to our relationships and our family we're going to be struggling. That's the default. The issue is, some of us here, we want Jannah now. We don't want problems. We don't want issues. We want our spouse to be perfect. We want our kids to be perfect. And so when a problem comes, an issue comes, a difficulty comes, we get upset. We get overwhelmed. Why? Why is this happening to me? And I gave this example before. Imagine you have a vacation, you're going to an island with your family. Full resort, everything covered. But there's a 2-hour flight there, and you're upset about the flight. Why is it so congested? Where's the sand? Where's my all-inclusive halal meals? You're angry about the flight when you don't realize the flight is what? That's not your vacation. It's just a few hours. Your actual vacation and happiness is when you get to the island. And so sometimes in this running around, we forget that this life is only a few days. And by default, the expectation is you're going to have problems, you're going to have issues. Sometimes we look at other people and say, man, their life is so much easier. They're so blessed. No issues and problems. When we don't realize those other people have difficulties that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has hidden. Every person has difficulties. And if you were to take on whoever it is you're thinking, oh, this person has, mashallah, very financially well off, mashallah, this person has such successful kids, this person has such a great career, such a great house, whatever it is that you are looking at that other person, realize that they have struggles and problems that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was to give that to you, you wouldn't be able to handle it. And your problems, they wouldn't be able to handle. And so very first thing is we have to set the expectations. If you look at Fir'aun had everything. He was one of the most wealthiest, most powerful person on the earth, Pharaoh. Everything you could think of. He had an army, he had his castles, he had everything. And yet, even with having everything, which modern day times, there was a billionaire, somebody who was very well off. You might think, they're set. And so even Fir'aun was not able to sleep at night. Even Fir'aun was scared. He had nightmares. So externally he had everything, but internally he didn't have that peace. He didn't have this ability to handle these issues and problems in his life. When we think of Iman, when we think of Islam, when we think of La ilaha illallah, we still are going to have those problems. It doesn't mean, now that I'm Muslim, the problems are gone. The difference is with our Iman, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the strength and the guidance to get through those problems. This is very important. Problems are still there. But the key difference is our Iman allows us the ability to get through those guidances, get through those difficulties. Imagine you're in an ocean, and you're on a boat, and there's a storm coming. Strong winds, the waves are going up and down. Our Iman is that boat. Not everyone has a boat. And some people, if you look at their lives, their emotions, their fears, their concerns, their worries, they drown in them. Life-changing. They're not able to bounce back from those emotions or big issues that happen in their life. Two of the hardest emotions that we're going to have to go through. Two of the most difficult, overwhelming emotions that we will have to go through is fear and sadness. What are the two emotions? Fear and sadness. Fear has to do with the future. It has to do with, am I going to have my job? Are my kids going to end up turning out okay? So those people who are not married, am I going to get married? Am I going to find someone? Those people who are married, is my relationship going to last? Am I going to one day get a diagnosis and all of a sudden I'm in the hospital? Fear is about tomorrow. What's going to happen? And you're constantly worried about so many things. Sadness, grief is about the past. People you might have lost. You walk with that sadness, that grief. It could be mistakes that you made, that regret. If only I did this. If only I went to that school. If only I took that other job opportunity. If only I married that other person. Things would be different. That's about the past. And when you look at Adam alayhi salam, when he was sent down, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, فَمَنْ تَبِعَ هُدَايَ فَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. That whoever follows my guidance will be able to combat that fear and that sadness. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knew from Adam alayhi salam, the first human being, to the last person on this earth, that the story of humanity, that every single person will deal with fear and sadness. When the Prophet ﷺ lost Khadija radiallahu anha, he felt her absence. It was tough for him. He ﷺ continued to live his day by day, but he felt the sadness of her not being there. Having sadness, having these emotions is not reflective of low iman. Who better has iman than Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? But yet he carried it with him. When you look at Yaqub alayhi salam, when he lost his son Yusuf alayhi salam, he had a great amount of sadness. He lost his son, and he cried so much that his eyes became white. So sadness is there. And look at an extreme case of this, the story of the mother of Musa alayhi salam. And I want you to imagine, especially those, alhamdulillah, I just had a newborn a few weeks ago. So this story is different for me. The mother of Musa alayhi salam, The soldiers are right outside their door. And they know that when the soldiers come in, they see her son, what are they going to do? They're going to kill the baby infant. Can you imagine what a mother, the emotions that a mother is going through for their infant child who is just about to be killed? And so in that moment, she's inspired by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to put the baby in a basket. And not just place it into the river. Alqi fil yam, to throw it into the river. Ilqa means to throw. And this river is moving water. It could flip over. Water could get inside the basket. It could sink. There's animals there. You know, if you ever have go to a swimming pool and a young child, even if they're just 2 feet away from the water, not even the deep water, just the regular water, a mother will drop everything and run, push people around to get the child. A mother might be giving them a shower, their baby, and in the tub they fill the water this much, and the baby's like, toddler's like, no, give more water. She goes, no, she gets worried. You might drown. I'm super extra careful. This is a full-blown river. And if you ever held a newborn doesn't even know how to hold the neck up. So sensitive, so delicate. So can you imagine the fear in this woman's heart? And not only does she have to do this, after doing this, she can't look back. She can't say, my baby. Because as soon as she indicates that, what's going to happen? The shoulders are going to go after the baby. So even in this moment, this extreme sense of fear, anxiety. And then in this moment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, لا تخافي ولا تحزني, don't be afraid, don't feel the sadness. One walk-away point from this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in those moments. That fear and that issue is still going to be there, but Allah will help you overcome will prevent you from being drowned in that fear and that sadness. But the key point is, the ayah talks about how her heart was tied. Imagine a heart about to explode. Her heart was tied. So when it comes to the emotions, we need to learn that you and I are not capable to handle all our emotions alone. We have to turn to Allah for that strength. Sometimes we make the issue of carrying all these burdens on those shoulders. We have to, every single day, give our problems to Allah. Oh Allah, I'm really dealing with this hard thing. Oh Allah, I'm really worried about this. Oh Allah, I'm really sad about this. Because you're talking to Allah, you're trusting Allah. And you're able to have that relationship. If you look at the Quran, even if something mentioned once, it's important. It's significant. You should look into it. Khawf is mentioned over 100 times in the Quran. We have fear for every single aspect of our life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. You will be tested with fear and hunger. You're going to lose things in your life. One of the first things when the righteous enters Jannah, what is the first thing the angels say? أَلَّا تَخَافُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا. Don't be afraid, don't grieve. May Allah make us one of those people. The Prophet ﷺ told us to recite a dua every single morning. That's the dua I have right here. It's a dua that covers protection against 8 things. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-hammi wal-hazan wal-'ajzi wal-kasal wal-jubni wal-bukhl wa-dala'i ad-din wa ghalabat ar-rijal. Asking for protection asking protection from worry and grief, from incapacity and laziness, from cowardice and miserliness, and from being heavily in debt and being overpowered by others. And a key takeaway point, if you forget everything else today, and I want you to think about this, Allah will test you a little bit of poverty so that money can no longer be your source of security. Allah may test us financially to remind you and me that do not depend on money as your source of comfort. Some of us, we have a large savings, it's our comfort. If we get more money, we feel more confident. We feel more safe. Some of us, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may test us with sickness to remind us that there will come a time where you're going to lose your health. Allah may test us by taking away a family member to remind us they were never ours to begin with. We say, this is my mother, my father, my son, my daughter, my family. And so imagine you have pillars in your life that you lean on. These pillars support you. When one of those pillars are removed away, it reminds you the only pillar you should have in your life is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The only source of trust, only source of comfort, only source of support. Key action items, takeaways today. Number 1 is La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Number 2, Hasbi Allah wa ni'mal wakeel. And number 3 is this dua. The dua for protection against many things, particularly protection from worry and grief, fear and sadness. Abu Musa al-Ashir in the hadith al-Bukhari, he was walking, and the Prophet ﷺ once came to him and said, should I give you a kanz, a treasure from the treasures of Jannah? He said, Ya Rasulullah, yes. He said, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah is a treasure of Jannah. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Ibn Masud explains this phrase means there is no way you can stop disobeying Allah without the help of Allah. There is no way you can obey Allah without the help of Allah. La hawla, tahawul, is to change from one state to another. That there is no way I can change my state, my situation, except through the power of Allah. I cannot go from heedlessness to guidance without La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. I cannot go from being in debt to being debt-free without understanding La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. I cannot go from sickness to health without understanding La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. I can't go from being single to being married without understanding La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. When the muadhin, Rasulullah tells us what? That when the adhan is going on, you should repeat the adhan. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, you say Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. You're following along. But when the muadhin says, Hayya ala salah, and then when muadhin says, Hayya ala salah, do you repeat after that? No, we don't. We say, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Because there's no way I can go perform the salah without the permission and the gift and the honor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In another narration, the Prophet said that should I not guide you to one of the doors of Jannah? And the Sahabi said, yes, Ya Rasulullah. He said, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah is one of the doors of Jannah. Sometimes people don't say this word at the right time. Sometimes a person hears of your father passed away, and they say, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Scholars tell us that's not what you should be saying. When someone passes away, what should you say? Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. That my father, my mother, whoever passed away, it wasn't mine, it belonged to Allah, and that person returned to Allah. When do you say La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah? Is that when you're in a state of weakness and you need strength. When you're in a state of weakness, or when you're sick and you need to be healthy, you say La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. A very important action item, Rasulullah tells us that when you leave the house, it's a very powerful dua. Bismillahir tawakkaltu ala Allah wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. When you say this, you're leaving the house, you're trusting Allah. Oh Allah, I'm going outside. Everything I need to do today, my affairs, my issues, I'm trusting to you. An angel is assigned for your protection. So much so that the shaitan tell each other that this person, we can't do anything with this person. Because of 3 things. This person is defended, this person is guarded, and this person is guided. The second key takeaway, and we all know that the best du'as are the du'as in the Quran. And this is a dua that I believe in a previous lecture we talked about. Rasulullah ﷺ, when he was surrounded in Ahzab, the battle, 10,000 people in Medina, he was surrounded, outnumbered, outmatched. He made this dua. When Prophet Ibrahim was thrown into the fire that Namrud made, he made this dua. When Aisha radiallahu anha, her honor was challenged. Her honor was challenged and people started spreading rumors against her. She said this dua. What is this dua? Hasbi Allah wa ni'mal wakeel. Hasbi Allah wa ni'mal wakeel. Allah is enough for me. Allah is the best person to take care of my affairs. Allah is greater than whatever obstacle is in front of you. Hasbunallah, I don't need anybody else. I don't need anyone else. And ni'mal wakil, I choose Allah's planning over my planning. I choose Allah's planning over my planning. We have plans. We think this is how things should go in life. And Hasbi Allah is a reminder that if something happens, if let's say you lose your job, and you're thinking to yourself, I don't want to lose my job. How am I going to pay the bills? Where am I going to get another job in this market? It's so difficult. Hasbi Allah is saying, you know what? Allah knows what's best for me. And me losing this job is the best thing that can happen in my life right now. Because Allah will open the doors to something even better. It's that trust. And Rasulullah tells us that every single morning and every evening you should recite this Hasbi Allah alladhi la ilaha illa huwa alayhi tawakkaltu wa huwa rabbul arshil azim. We should try to make that into our habit. And I'll end with, I think we have 10 minutes left. One time, Sa'id al-Khudri was sitting in the masjid. And Rasulullah came, it's narrated. Once the Prophet came, and he saw a man from the Ansar named Abu Umama, and he said to Abu Umama, he saw him, and he could tell he was overwhelmed. Can you imagine? Who's busier than Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? No one's busier. No one has more on his plate than Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he has the emotional intelligence to just look at someone and see something's off. Not only does he have the ability to see something's off, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam could have easily prayed his salah and went home. How many of us, we come for the salah, and we know something's wrong, we're like, let me just quickly get in and get out. Let me avoid this person. Because I know if I talk to that person, I'm going to hear their problems. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam went to Abu Umama, and he asked him, what's going on? He was sitting in the masjid during, off-peak time, normally when he wasn't there, and he looked like he had a lot on his heart. And he said to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I am overcome with a lot of anxiety and I'm buried in debt. I'm overcome with a lot of anxiety and I'm buried in debt. I have a lot going on in my life right now. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, let me teach you some words that if you say them on a daily basis, if you say these in the morning and evening, Allah will do away with your anxiety and do away with your debt. Allah will do away with your anxiety and do away with your debt. And that's the dua that's on this paper. Dua from 8 things. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-hummi wal-hazan. Oh Allah, I seek refuge from anxiety and grief. Wa'udhu bika min al-ajli wal-kasal. From inability and laziness. So again, we talked about anxiety and grief. Anxiety is about the future. Grief is about the past. Min al-ajli wal-kasal. It's about inability and laziness. There are some times where there's a situation you can't do anything. You're helpless. Then there are situations you can do something. You can speak up, but you don't do it out of fear. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. وَأَعُوذُ بِكَ مِنَ الْجُبْنِ وَالْبُخْلِ. From stinginess and cowardice. From stinginess and cowardice. Where, from a financial perspective or from a personal status perspective, if you say something, it's going to make you look weak. Or if you give money that's needed, you're worried about your own finances. If I donate now, what's going to happen? It's about, you're thinking about yourself, self-preservation. So you're asking Allah, Allah protect me from this. And it's a different narration. I seek refuge from being heavily in debt and being subjugated to man. Meaning, usually when you're in debt, you're at the whims of somebody else. It's kind of like you have like handcuffs on. And making this dua, these are very important words, because within each of these words is an attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It reminds you that Allah is the one that provides. When it comes to the past, Allah, if there was an opportunity you missed, there's nothing you could have done to get that opportunity. When it comes to the future, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that will take care of you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that will, if you're worried about your kids, Allah is the one that guides. If you're worried about your finance, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that gives you rizq. And I remember this beautiful story, I think it was Shaykh Bismillahir was talking about one of his teachers was where, in the village they had a well, and there was a man that went to the well to get water from the well. he was getting water, and something happened in a way that the wall collapsed and the man fell into the water. Fell into the well, all the way at the bottom. And he's asking for help. Eventually people start coming, and they're thinking to themselves, it's such a steep fall. There's no way he survived that. It's almost impossible with the way that the rocks were. And it turns out he was alive. And so the people got together, they put the rope down, they helped him get up, and they helped fix the well. And the man got out, he was sitting there, he just fell into the well. He almost basically died. And somebody came and gave him, like, listen, drink some milk. He took a sip of milk. And then he's like, no, I'm okay, it's fine. And everyone's like, are you sure? And he said, yes, I'm okay. And then he's like, I still need to finish getting a little bit of more water. Then he went back, and as he was trying to get the water, it happened again, he fell, and then the second time he died. And the scholars explained about the incident. He said that it could be the only reason he didn't die the first time is because that sip of milk was written in his rizq. Meaning you cannot leave this world without the last penny that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written for you. It's guaranteed, it's done. All you have to do is strive for it, but it's written, it's confirmed. Meaning you don't have to worry about, am I going to get the rizq or not? The rizq that you're going to get is confirmed. All you have to worry about is trying your best. Going out, going to work. If you don't have a job, applying for jobs. But this idea that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of it. And so, as we wrap up, what are the key things? 3 emotions, 3 concepts. Number 1, this life is a struggle. This life is a test. You have to walk around understanding, in this few days on this earth, Allah will test me. And Allah will only test me with what? What I can handle. And there's every single person sitting here right now has your own customized tests. Some of us, mashallah, we're well off financially, but we're really struggling with our families. Some of us have amazing families, you're close, but you're struggling with your health. Some have amazing finances and amazing families, and they're struggling with something else. That they're not able to have kids, or they're not able to, whatever the case may be, every single person has struggles. We need to walk around understanding that this is not Jannah. This dunya cannot hold what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to give you. It cannot hold what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to give you. And so whenever you're dealing with anything, in Jannah, there's no taxes. There's no bills. There's no fighting between family members. And if you want a house, you get the house. You don't have to, there's no bidding war. Everything you're worrying about right now, it's going to be taken care of in Jannah. Just for a few days, you're going to be tested. And so mentally, your mindset is, something happens, you turn to Allah. Hasbi Allah wa ni'mal wakeel. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Oh Allah, help me with this. I know what's better for me. Number 2, you have this fear about the future. You have anxiety. What's going to happen? You turn to this dua. Read this dua. Understand this dua. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that will take care of things. And realize in the hadith that Rasulullah tells us that if the entire world were to get together, especially after, somebody told me we should have a post-election topic today because the election happened. But whatever the case may be, we have so many things on our mind. What's going to happen? Some people are worried about, when it comes to khawf, some people are worried that on the day of judgment, with everything going on in Gaza, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alleviate their stress and help all those who are suffering. But on the day of judgment, Allah will ask you, what did you do? Other people are worried about all this oppression is going to end up coming here. People think, I have a blue passport. Oh, I don't have to worry. No, that's not the case. I have enough money, I don't have to worry. No, that's not the case. I live XYZ in a great community. I don't have to worry about, God forbid, somebody harming or some type of issue where it's racism and my family gets hurt. Everything you're worrying about, again, for the future, none of those things will protect you. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is your protection. That's all you need. And the last thing is about grief in the past and everything going on, sadness, and you turn to Allah and you ask for His support, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that will help you with those emotions. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to act on everything that we said, to make it part of our habit. If we can't do all 3, try to do 1. So again, Hasbi Allah la ilaha illa huwa alayhi tawakkaltu wa huwa rabbul arshil azim, 7 times every morning. Number 2, when you're leaving the house, Bismillahir tawakkaltu ala Allah wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Number 3, you read this dua every morning, evening, inshallah. Jazakallah khairan, accept. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك سبحان الذي رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. جزاك الله خير.